What's up everybody, this is Ven and I welcome you to the M.O.C Spotlight where we take apart what you build. For today's episode we'll be going over A.R.C.U.S, Armored Response Core Unit System, created and posted on our message boards by CelticSpartan. And as always, before we get into the review, let me tell you about my method of reviewing, which involves a point system that is based on 3 fundamental attributes: the overall appearance of the M.O.C, the build of the M.O.C itself, and the concept and ideas behind the M.O.C creation. Each quality will mount up to 5 points, leading up to a final score that will be determined at the end of the episode. And please remember that this is all based on my opinion. So let's get this started. Hey look, it's the Iron Giant. Now what instantly caught my attention about this M.O.C is this recolor of the Great Huna, or should I say paint job. Now as most of us know, the Great Huna didn't come in any other color aside from dark red, so seeing it in a different color is kinda neat, and seeing it in 2 different colors is a lot neater. And for the M.O.C itself, I appreciate the fact that the color scheme seems to be based on the same colors that are used in the mask. I mean, that kinda makes sense for cohesion's sake, but it's nice to see that the scheming is still there, with the primary color being silver and the secondary color being black, and these hints of green that are even present in the mask. Now looking at this M.O.C from the ground up, I gotta say that it has a very peculiar sense of proportions. We have these gigantic feet attached to these bulky legs that progressively become slimmer as we move upward, transitioning into a slim torso, or at least it looks slim until you get to like the pectoral portion. And then we look at the arms, starting with these stick figure biceps here that are somehow connected to these gigantic forearms that bring out these gorilla paws that by themselves scream Hulk smash. I mean, these are some really cartoony proportions, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I don't think it really flows with the whole aesthetic that this creation has, with everything looking so complicated and mechanical and etc. etc. So that kind of throws it off for me a little bit, but it's not the worst thing ever. Did I mention that mask looks really neat? Anyway, looking at the back, gotta say I really like that it carries that armored plating motif that it has in the front, and for some reason this style isn't really carried over into the rest of the creation. Like if there was some armored plating in like the arms or the legs, I think that would look pretty cool, really cohesive too. But no, instead everything else is, like I said, kind of mechanical and complex looking, while the torso, and really just the torso, front and back, has this sort of simplistic armored plating style that I think would look a lot better with the proportions of this creation. That would probably fit the whole cartoony thing a bit better. I will say this though, it's nice to see that this M.O.C is pretty much entirely armored. It just kind of bugs me that the armor doesn't all follow the same sort of style. But regardless, it's still pretty good looking. Now as far as the build is concerned, it looks pretty well covered here. It looks like it kind of follows the same rules as a generic A.R.C.U.S build. Obviously this isn't a generic A.R.C.U.S build. We have that custom torso and then the custom legs and custom arms. But it still follows the same principles as the A.R.C.U.S build. It even features some parts of the A.R.C.U.S build. That said, the articulation looks pretty standard. We have movement in the head, all the limbs can move. We even have articulated fingers. Only thing to note is that the head and the feet look a little bit restricted in movement, but I don't really doubt that they can move at all. Unfortunately, it looks like this guy kind of fits the massive no-neck roid rager archetype. Gotta say, I really like the way that these forearms are built. That's a very unique usage of parts there, with that Visorak body frame piece being used as the basis of the forearm. And the legs also look really well built, but I can't agree with the decision of using these pieces as toes, just cause it kinda looks a little weird. There's a few interesting builds in this creation, but I can't help but think that it'd be really freaking sweet if the entirety of this M.O.C had such an intuitive build, rather than just being the forearms and the bottom legs. Yeah, bit of untapped potential here. Also, I gotta say, while it goes with the color scheme, the big black torso piece sticks out a bit awkwardly on this model, and it doesn't really match the aesthetic of the rest of the parts on this M.O.C. So of course there's the question, does this M.O.C have a great usage of parts? And I would have to say, yeah, kind of, in some small portions, but not enough to really impress all too much. So yeah, pretty okay build overall. Now, the big idea behind this creation is that it's supposed to be a robot, designed to act as a bodyguard for high-profile targets, as well as act as a perimeter sentry and an exosuit. Jeez. Okay then. Alright, so it's supposed to be a robot, and that would explain some of the mechanical aesthetics that it has all around the creation. But I gotta say, given its overall appearance, I can't really see it accomplishing all of these tasks. I mean, acting as a bodyguard? Sure, I could see the dude just kind of smacking around anybody that's considered a threat or like stomping on them or something. But acting as a sentry without any guns, any sort of ranged weapon, or acting as an exosuit? I mean, this thing doesn't even look like it has room for a stomach. Whatever is going to be using this as an exosuit has to be like really tiny. At least that's what I would imagine. But hey, it's supposed to be a robot. Robots can look like anything, so that already accomplishes that sort of goal. And there were some neat ideas thrown into the design of this thing. The best one, hands down, being that custom mask. But then there's also features like these giant hands that also give this M.O.C a bit more character and personality and etc, etc. But as far as being a sentry or an exosuit or anything else that's a bit more useful than a big hulky bodyguard that looks like it could be voiced by Vin Diesel, you know, I would kind of expect some sort of like mounted machine gun on its forearms or something. Or a bit more bulk so it'd actually look like it would fit another figure inside of it. Or maybe a feature where you can actually open up this big old chest and reveal a minifigure inside. That would have been cool. By the end of it, I can't help but say that this M.O.C had a bit more potential to be something a lot cooler than it really is. Because the ideas that the builder had going for it were pretty ambitious, and I would have loved to have seen that ambition unfold a bit better, with a bit more creativity thrown into the mix. Also, for something that's supposed to act as a bodyguard for another thing, you would think that it would be a bit bigger in some areas, like these biceps, or the torso. Definitely the torso, like... Say the dude that this guy is protecting is suddenly getting shot at out of nowhere, and then this guy has to jump in the line of fire. What use is that going to be if the enemy can shoot through your gaps? But this is assuming that the robot is only a little bit bigger than the person it's protecting, and not a minifigure, because if it is protecting something like the size of a minifigure, maybe a bit bigger, a bit smaller or whatever, then maybe I could see that. But wouldn't it be a little overkill to have a bodyguard robot that's kind of the size of a kaiju? Maybe I'm just thinking too hard on this, huh? At this point, I think I'm ready to move on to the final scores. I don't have much more to say. Well, I guess I do, but then it would just turn into rambling, and we can't have that. I'd rather not become Kahi 2.0. So in terms of appearance, this M.O.C receives a 3.5 out of 5. It's a pretty neat looking M.O.C, but I think there's something to be said if the most interesting part about your creation is a painted mask. I think a bit more aesthetic cohesion would have made this M.O.C look a lot nicer, because otherwise it comes off looking a bit typical, and I'm not a big fan of these proportions, so there's that. As far as the build goes, I'm gonna have to give it a 4 out of 5. It does the job of keeping the M.O.C standing upright and structurally stable, but aside from being a modified Anika build, it's not all that impressive. But again, I am giving it a high score because of its solidified structure and its articulation, and some parts of the build are actually pretty good looking. But it's still a chip off of what I would consider to be a really good build. And as far as the concept goes, I'll have to give it a 3 out of 5. It's a basic idea, make a guardian type of robot thing, and that was executed fairly well. But when I have to conclude my thoughts about this creation, I just can't help but think that there's a lot of untapped potential. I feel that the builder could have been a bit more creative about it, and probably make the design look a bit better too. Because if you're building a robot that looks like it's supposed to perform multiple tasks, then make it look like that. And with all that said, we are left with a final score of 10.5 out of 15. It's not a bad creation by any means, but again, there's a lot of room for improvement and adding extra detail and character to the creation. Because the builder had some pretty good ideas that he just did not represent that well in the M.O.C. Unless it really is supposed to be some sort of 10-story robot, much like the Iron Giant. So yeah, in the end, good job, CelticSpartan. You made a fairly interesting M.O.C, and I do hope to see more out of you in the future. And from the rest of you viewers. If you have a creation that you'd like for me to see at some point, post it on our message boards at board.tdvpodcast.com. Under the LEGO Creations category, the message boards might have a different name by the time you hear this recording, but don't worry about that. You can still type in board.tdvpodcast.com and still get to your destination. We got you covered. So thank you all for watching, and have a good day. Or else I'll send my giant killer robot after you.